Elton John and Bernie Taupin's Heartfelt Cannes Film Festival premiere of Rocketman. I'm John Bowden from Rock History Music. It was an emotional evening last Thursday at Cannes when Dexter Fletcher, the director, star Taron Egerton, Elton John, and of course his songwriting partner Bernie Taupin watched the very first showing of Rocketman. One thing's for sure, the crowd went nuts when the film was over. Elton John stood up and he was emotional. Taron Egerton was as well. People were reporting all over the internet that he was crying as they hugged each other at the end of the film. It must have been an amazing cathartic experience for not only Elton and Bernie, but anyone involved in this project, which is being, of course, compared to Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. For obvious reason, Dexter Fletcher is involved because he ended up finishing Bohemian Rhapsody when Bryan Singer left that project. Bryce Dallas Howard, who plays Elton's mother, she said she was watching Elton John too. It's amazing. You're hearing all these tidbits about, while the duo, Bernie and Elton, were actually watching this. Everyone was watching the movie, of course, but they were also watching Elton and Bernie to see their reactions. Because even though it's guts and all kind of version of Elton John's life, the songs, like Bohemian Rhapsody, might not quite be in the right order. They're used to tell a story. In Rocketman, there are fantasy sequences, but you get the gist of who Elton John was and is. But it's that rise to fame period. The press did make a big deal about Egerton crying, to which he responded, all right, let's stop talking about it. He told the press the next day, I got a bit emotional. It was one of the best days of my life. We worked really hard to make something that we're both really proud of. It's not your typical biopic. We don't deal with the songs in chronological order. There are elements of fantasy. We take some license with the truth, but the response has been so wonderful. You've made a young man from Aberystwyth just incredibly happy. And as far as Elton John, he said, you made a 72-year-old rock star even more happy. Bryce Dallas Howard said it best. She says, here we are having an opportunity to celebrate the works of Elton John and Bernie Taupin, basically while they're still here. They're still out there. They're still writing. They're still performing. They're still doing their thing. Every time I've done a review of Elton John, at the end of it, I usually say, I'm glad you're still here. And this weekend, when Elton was performing on stage at the same big event celebrating the film, he said, when I watch the movie, I don't see an actor, I see myself. And that's an extraordinary thing for an actor to do. He has given 1,000,000% of himself in this performance. Interestingly, Egerton says he had a chance to spend some time with him and his girlfriend at Elton John's house. And one weekend they got really drunk. Not Elton, because Elton's been sober for a lot of years. But he says he really enjoyed, basically having full access to the $60 million man, as we used to call him in the 70s. Captain Fantastic, and all the other nicknames he had, including, of course, Rocketman. You may not be surprised by this. Elton John says the hardest part of the movie was not the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The hardest part was watching his family, the inner workings of his family. He said part of the reason he became an addict was his background. He adds, I really value the fact that my parents stayed together for me when they were unhappy with each other. I've come to understand the circumstances that they went through, and I'm not angry or bitter about that whatever. But he does add that it left scars, and of course it does. You can forgive someone, but the stuff might still be there, and that stuff makes us do stuff. His parents, by the way, divorced when he was 14 years old. I have not seen the film yet. I'm really looking forward to it. I really wasn't until a few weeks ago. And interestingly, it was not the old Elton John music that kind of brought me there, because I listened to that stuff all the time. I had a craving to listen to Oceans Away from the Diving Board. And that's one of those Elton John songs, a newer Elton John song, that made me appreciate what he does now. I know some of you might think I'm crazy, but I stack that with the 70s stuff. I mean, I'm a 70s pocket Elton John fan. I love the 80s version and the 90s version, but I grew up with the 70s stuff. That's the period that moved me when I was impressionable, when I needed something to hold on to. I've said this before on this channel, Madman Across the Water, which I still have the actual copy that I bought. Even when I sold all my records, I kept that one and a few other albums I knew might not be released on CD anytime soon. I still have it. That was the first album I ever bought. Not only the first Elton John album, first album. And it's one of my all-time favorite records of all time. What's the first Elton John album you ever bought? I'm kind of curious. I read the comments. I love your comments. Anyway, I want to thank you for subscribing to our channel. Make sure you comment on our videos. Remember, I read those comments every day, especially on the weekends. I always try to get back to people. And please share our videos. If you're members of groups, if it's topical to the group, please share our videos. We love it when you do that. And there's even websites who share our videos on their websites. We like that too. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music. Thanks for indulging me.